Okay, we've got the Bible out for this one, all right? Because I feel like this is something that I have been thinking a lot about lately and really like hit me in a way that I know God was speaking. And so I want to share it with you because I think it might be something that's helpful for you too, okay? So I was recently on a prayer retreat and it was fantastic. So many good things come out of a prayer retreat, and I just feel like I always am still waiting months later and God is still revealing things that I was like, "Oh, I feel like that process was started on this prayer retreat." 10 out of 10. I think I'm going to try to take a prayer retreat every single year. A little prayer moment if I can. And we're going to figure that out. But anyways, this prayer retreat was in early July and I am still like just sitting with a lot of the things that I feel like I was able to like think through and process, and it was fantastic. And kind of the theme for it was just the chaos of life and the fact that like in many ways I often choose chaos even though I don't need to. And I enjoy being chaotic. I enjoy having crazy things happening all the time. I enjoy constantly being on the move and kind of sitting with that and just realizing that it could be, pride pushing that for me. And that actually, Jesus was very peaceful. Chaos was still happening around him, but there was an element of peace within him that was really, really good. And a fruit of the Spirit is peace. And so just kind of sitting with that and, thinking through all of that. And the more I thought, the more I prayed, the more I kind of reflected on what that chaos looked like for me, a large portion of it came back to productivity. I enjoy constantly accomplishing. Okay. And guys, I think all of us can somewhat relate to this. If we're listening to this podcast, at least, all of us can somewhat relate to being type A, ambitious, like a go getter into some extent. Okay. Like we're all doing something, we're chasing something, and that's good. It is good to be ambitious. It is good to be someone who creates a lot of productivity in their life and gets things done. And struggling with like slothfulness or laziness is not something that I think, at least in this timing, will struggle with. And I mentor this younger girl, and she had asked me about that, about burnout and prevention and all this. And we were talking through that. And I said, listen, the Bible speaks on laziness and how that's an evil and a sin. And I said, and what's great is that's never going to be the temptation we fall into. However, the temptation we fall into is going to be over productivity, over ambition. And that can, the same way laziness, slowness, all of that can be a sin if taken too far. Ours can equally be a sin. And so just kind of processing through a lot of like that and all of this, I kept coming back to John 15. Okay. John 15 means a lot to me because John 15:5, I have a vine tattooed to my arm. And that's because in John 15:5, this verse means the world to me. And it says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Okay. So this is one of my life verses. Like I said, literally have a tattoo to constantly remind me of this, where Jesus is the vine. Jesus and is who we have to abide in constantly in order so that way we can produce much fruit. And for a while, I really focused on the fruit portion of this. Okay. I really focused on, okay, what is the fruit? Okay. The fruit, like fruit of my life, all this stuff, and like trying to figure out what exactly it meant to abide in him and to be, so in different seasons of life, I've really harnessed onto different parts of this verse and like, okay, abide in him. How do we abide in him? What does that mean? What does the word abide mean? All of this. Okay. Now I kept coming back to this verse and I was like, Lord, like, is there more to this? Like I've studied this verse so much. It means so much to me. Am I still missing more? And I just like all of a sudden realized the word produces in there. And I was like, that's interesting. And what is productivity? Productivity is to produce. Okay. I know, groundbreaking. So when I sat there and saw that there is a level of production required here, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I kept reading on, and it says, anyone who does not remain in me is thrown away like a useless branch and withers. Such branches are gathered to be burned. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted for you, because when you produce much fruit, you, my true disciples, this will bring great glory to my Father. And again, there was that word produce. And again, there's the word abide. And I was just like processing through this. And I was like, okay, ultimately, what does it look like for me to be productive for Jesus? What does my productivity look like when it is for Jesus, for his glory, and not for my own? Because that's where the sin comes in. That's where it gets wonky for us, is when our productivity points back to us. When we keep accomplishing so that way we look greater, so we have more glory, so we are more honored, so we are more seen, we are more elevated. That is when the sin comes in. That's when the pride comes in. And that's when productivity can be toxic. That's when productivity will lead to burnout. That's when we are no longer doing things with the correct motivation and heart posture. So we have to adjust this and refocus our productivity to be for Jesus, because Jesus is clear here. We are to be productive. We are to produce fruit, but it has to be for his glory. So that leads to, the question of, okay, what does this look like? How do we produce fruit? Well, let's go to the fruits of the Spirit, okay? So in Galatians, this is very clear. The fruit of the Spirit is love. And then it goes on to say joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, I listened to a really interesting commentary. Did I read it or listen to it? I can't remember. And it talks about how actually the fruit of the Spirit, it's not fruits, plural, it's fruit of the Spirit, is love. And it just kind of ends there. Like, love is the fruit of the Spirit. And love manifests itself in the world through joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's how we kind of use the love, use the fruit of the Spirit, and those are the ways that it's actually is an example of the love, okay? And I think to an extent that's true. I think the fruit of the Spirit really can be summed up as love, but that means it's a helpful example for us to follow, that this is how we are like living out that love. This is how we are living out the love of the Spirit, is through the other fruits of the Spirit that we all know and love. So, okay, all of that to say, if it means that we will produce much fruit, I used to think that meant we were producing disciples. I thought fruit there meant if I produce a lot of disciples, if I am able to produce more people, then, and only then, am I abiding in the vine. Then I'm going to have proof that I'm this great Christian, and that, again, back to I deserve glory because look at all these people and all this fruit. But that's not our job to make people believe in Jesus, because that will never happen. It really won't. We cannot save people. We cannot be that. What we can do is share the love of God, share that with people, share where that love comes from, and allow God to work in their lives. Because there is not a single person that is credited with my salvation except Jesus. The same way, there is not a single person credited with your salvation except Jesus. But there are definitely people in our lives that showed us this fruit, showed us love, and allowed for us to then experience Jesus in a very tangible way that led us to where we are now as Christians. So all of that to say, when we look at what does my productivity look like for Jesus, not just for myself, not just for, me to get some checks in the boxes here, it is to produce love. It is to do every single action that I partake in with love. And that's going to show up as joy. That's going to show up as me being a joyful person that's positive to be around and conscious of that. I'm going to choose joy. And that usually means that I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to be complaining and gossiping and doing all of those things, because I am a joyful person, because love is just exuding out. That means I'm going to be a person of peace. I'm not going to cause chaos every room I walk into. I'm not going to be insubordinate to leaders. I'm not going to cause division around me. I'm going to choose peace. I'm going to choose patience, even when it's hard. I'm going to make sure that we are patient people who are waiting calmly, even if it's not on our time. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be good and faithful and gentle, and I'm going to just live in self-control because I'm a disciplined person, because all of these are ways that we are producing fruit. So it's less about the actual action, but more about how we show up to be in the moment. Less about the actual things we're doing, the tasks we're completing, the checks in the boxes, and more about how we are in the moment. We have to abide in the love. So when we do this, we become productive members of the kingdom. And this is what points people to Jesus, because I can sit there on a corner and tell you that you're going to go to hell. I can sit there and say, hey, your entire life is not the way that you think it is. Your entire worldview is wrong. I can say all that to people, and it may be something that causes them to think, but how much more so beneficial in all of these scenarios would it be to love these people and then allow that love to show them Jesus Christ, because that's what we're called to do. That is the producing of the fruit. Because I have no power to save people. I have no power to produce salvation in someone else. That does not fall to me. That falls to the Holy Spirit. What does fall to me is to be productive for Jesus, which means to be in love for all. Okay? And I'm not saying this as someone who is saying you have to tolerate things, you have to have no boundaries, you have to not stand on your convictions. None of that. There's self-control in this. And also there's gentleness in there. There is a way to rebuke. There is a way to not tolerate. There is a way to have boundaries and to do it in self-control and to do it with gentleness. That's why gentleness is in there, is because if we agreed with everyone on everything, we wouldn't need to be gentle because we'd agree. So gentleness is in there because we don't always agree, okay? So all of that to say, this has just been sitting on my heart so much. And as you continue to read, John, it'll talk more about producing. And I love this so much because in John, again, 15:16, as you read a little further, it says, I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that my Father will give you what you ask using my name. This is my command. Love each other. Like how beautiful that we are to strive above all to love each other in all that we do. And our love shows up in those ways that we talked about, the fruits of the Spirit. And that's what it means to be productive. That's what Jesus is looking for when he says to produce fruit, because we are called to be productive. And I can go through my checklist every single day and accomplish every single thing I've set out to. But if I don't do it with the heart posture of love, if I don't do it with the attitude of faithfulness, and if I don't do it with so much kindness and goodness and gentleness, then it's for nothing. Then it's for my own pride. Then it is almost a level of sin because I'm doing it for myself. And as Christians, we are called to do things for the kingdom and not ourselves. So anyways, like I said, I've been sitting with this one. I've been processing this one for a couple months now, and I feel like the Lord continues to just show me different aspects of this conversation, and I love it so much, and I'm really passionate about it, and I wanted to share with you because you guys know I love a good productivity hack. I love a good, making sure we're stewarding our time well, all of that good stuff, but we also need to make sure that we are being productive in the right way. And knowing that Jesus actually had something to say about our productivity made me feel really, really good and made me feel very seen and valued. So I just wanted to show you that. I wanted to show you that God cares that we are productive, but it needs to be for his glory and his glory alone. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this was enlightening and empowering. And yeah, I love you so much. And yeah, I pray over you. I pray over your week and that it is truly, genuinely productive.